Hey, Armin here. Welcome to the NSP Nutrition Show, where we cover training, nutrition, supplementation strategies, and a whole lot more. So stand by. Hey, and welcome to the NSP Nutrition Show. I'm Armin Eckelbarger.
Hey, and I'm Frank Mills, and we appreciate you joining us today. Today, Arm and I were going to be talking about compounds and triple splits from Vince Gironda himself. And in the second part of the show, we're going to be talking about the benefits of eating mixed nuts. You know, there's a lot of people think eating nuts is very fattening and bad for you. So Armin's got some great information for you there. So, Armin, I'm kind of excited to do the show this week, probably a little more so than normal, because it seems like we're kind of back to the Master Series, right?
Yeah, we are. There's so much good content in there. I got to highlight some of the little sections in there, and there's some good takeaways, in my opinion. But it's kind of impressive how he kind of progresses things through in the Master Series. So yeah,
Gotcha.
A good idea.
Well, when I saw compounds and triple splits, it sounded like a gymnastic event. And I'm like, no, that's not it. That's not it. So why don't we start by what Vince was talking about with compounds, so everybody knows.
Okay, so like in a nutshell, in his vision of compounds are sets that he's employing several exercises. Okay, so different aspects of a given muscle for help to maximize the growth, as Vince would put it. So you're doing several different exercises, again, to focus on the muscles, but they're typically compound in nature. So you're covering a lot of different area. Now, also Vince referred to this as non-specific program, as a non-specific program, but he felt, based on his own experience with it, I guess, as well, it would improve overall gains at this stage in the Master Series. So, which I think's interesting. I think it's got a lot of merit as well.
Interesting. Okay. In regards to like sets and reps, what was involved in the program, Armin?
So at this stage, Vince felt like 4 sets of 8 reps on each muscle worked was going to be ideal. So, and then he would just put together, the different exercises that combine with that. But yeah, it was kept it short, 4 sets of 8 reps. Now, he also suggested that you set up all your training equipment in advance, because he wanted you to do a really good, fast pace. And he didn't want you to slow down, because he wants you to maintain that pump that he felt was pretty vital. So, when you're doing it, he didn't want you to take any breaks at all. So if you had everything lined up and it's a busy gym, then he would say, okay, go to a similar exercise, but don't stop. So it's pretty important to him on that.
That's something I was going to ask you, because if you're training at home, or if you have your own personal gym, or it's a slower paced gym, it seems like it'd be easier to do that. But what happens if you are in a busy gym, like what you just mentioned?
So like in my situation, typically what I'm going to do is I'm going to survey the gym to see how many people are in it. Okay. And then sometimes what I'll do is I wear a hat, or because I don't, when I get up, I just go train. I'm not taking a shower or anything. So I'll wear a hat or a visor. And then what I'll do is I'll put that on a piece of equipment so that people know, hey, it's being used, because I'm going to be done pretty quick. Okay. So I'll put some on there to kind of, and if you have a training partner, it helps out, because they can kind of keep an eye on as you're going through. Then you would keep an eye as they're going through, because you do take a break after you get through your round of sets. So that's another way you can do it. So you have to kind of get strategic with it, but and then worst case, if somebody did happen to get on there, instead of getting in an argument and all that, because that's just going to delay it, then you definitely want to have a backup of some type in your mind that you would go to in the event it's busy. And sometimes that may need 3 backups, depending how busy the gym is. So that is one of the challenges with more advanced training, is being able to use the equipment to really add the intensity in by taking short breaks and then moving from one to the other. It is a challenge, but it can be done, and I've done it myself.
Absolutely. Okay, so what about different muscle groups? Was there a type of a training split to kind of break things up?
Yeah, so at this stage, Vince called it the triple split.
Okay.
Before with the other programs, it was like an upper body, lower body kind of thing. But now he's starting to break things out further to work on, again, shaping the muscles more effectively.
All right. So Armin, how does the actual term triple split work, so that we know?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Vince broke out the muscle groups in the triple split. So you would train at this stage of the program, you would train your lats, your pecs, and then your delts on one day. Now, that's a lot of large muscle groups to train on one day. So I was like, wow. And then, the next day you train your arms. So I think he had a little bit of focus on getting his arm development. And then that would be followed by leg day on the third day. Now, I would probably do a little differently. I would probably do, if I'm going to do this at all, I'd do lats, pecs, delts. But then the second day I would do legs to get a little more recovery, and then do my arms. And I'm sure he had a reasoning for doing that. But for me, when you're doing your lats, pecs, and delts, you're getting some arm work already. So maybe he was just trying to finish the arms off. But that's, again, there's different ways you can do these triple splits, but that's what he suggested at this point with the program. And then based on this, in his vision, it allowed 72 hours for each muscle group to get recovered, which he felt was optimal. And there's always debate back and forth on that. But you got to remember, with Vince, he didn't use a ton of different exercises. So he worked really hard with a limited amount of exercises, which he felt would get the job done. So it was probably pretty accurate for him at that time that 72 hours would work pretty well. Because if you're doing a lot more sets and other movements, personally, from my experience, at 72 hours isn't probably enough for that whole muscle to be totally recovered if you're really hitting it hard with with other strategies. So, but there you go.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned that Vince worked really hard, and that perked my curiosity to intensity, because if you're working all these different groups all at one time, you mentioned the recovery, all that. What about intensity, Armin? How exactly would that work in this?
Vince was pretty savvy on intensity. He was always looking for other ways to, make things harder, to make it more difficult. So at this part of the program, then he would, he'd really focus on the entire movement. Okay. Really feeling the muscle contract, and then even recommended as you get to the fatigue point, that's when you'd even do partial, or what we call quarter movements to get muscle failure. So you're doing not full range, but you're doing as many partials as you can until you just can't move the weight. And that's always good when you're going to go to muscle failure. And it works well, in my opinion. I've done it for years, and I still do it today.
Okay.
So, but the focus is make sure you're doing good form, and then just finish off with the partial or quarter movements, as he put it. And basically, mindset was treat this as if it was your only set. It was his suggestion on the mindset. So,
well, that kind of leads me to another question. Since this was such an intense program, what about adding weight? I mean, is this something you got to be really cautious with?
Yeah. Well, Vince, he would recommend adding weight only until after you've done after you've done like 3 workouts of that same situation, because he felt like that would help with the, making sure you're ready for the next increase. So he wanted to have as much quality going on as you're doing your 4 sets of 8 reps, using great form. And because in all honesty, on his chart, he would say, not everybody's going to get through it all. So which could have been the case as well. So he's saying, don't add the weight until you're getting through it, and then be prepared to bump it up another level. So, because he didn't want your form getting sloppier either. He wanted to make sure you're progressively adding that weight once you've really mastered what you're doing before that.
Gotcha. I am kind of curious. I mean, gosh, this seems like a pretty intense program, but exactly what in regards to exercises, did he have a certain amount of exercises that he combined in his plan, Armin?
Well, for this particular strategy, yes, he had key exercises he wanted, but it doesn't necessarily mean you couldn't use other ones. But the ones that he had suggested would be like for your back day, you're going to do an arched back short pull as one, and then you combine that with an overhead pull down. So that would be for your back workout. So basically, you're doing 4 sets total for your back. So that's 2 sets of 8 on the back short pull and two sets of 8 on the overhead pull down. That would be how I would have interpreted it. Okay. Then for chest, you do barbell neck press and then dumbbell flat fly. And then after that, this is on day 1. Then, next would be the shoulders. So you do front and back press, which, he was known for that, being a unique press movement using a barbell. And then 90-degree lateral raises. So that was for day 1.
So on day 2, you had mentioned he decided to go to arms on day 2. Is that right?
Yeah. So the exercises he suggested for triceps, because he had you start with triceps, which makes sense as it's a larger muscle. So he'd have you do the lying dumbbell extensions and then power push downs these are what he called them in the master series. And then on your biceps, he'd have you do dumbbell incline curls. You curl to the armpit. So you're leaning back, just curling right to the armpit to flex that bicep, and then bent over peaking barbell curl. So, and these are things that we can't demonstrate in the video because we just don't have the capacity, but you can look them up. But those are good exercises. But then he also had forearms. He did a lot of stuff for forearms, which, a lot of people don't even train those. But for forearms, you do incline dumbbell wrist curls. And then on top of that, he would do a thumb up wrist curl with the barbell as well. So that would take care of day 2 for the arms and what he had prescribed.
Wow, that does seem like a lot. So on day 3, he went to legs then?
Yeah, so for there, he did for the quads, he would do hack squats and then power leg extensions. And then after that, it was calves with the 30-degree toe raise and the leg press toe raises with the calves. And then his hamstring movement would basically be hyperextensions with weight. In his day, they didn't have a lot of leg curl equipment. So that was kind of an area that didn't get as much attention. This day and age, they have a ton of equipment for that. So, obviously we want to plug something in there for your quad day, your leg day anyways. So you're looking at that hamstring really well, help bring out the full development of the hamstring.
Interesting. Okay. So I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, how long do you do this routine for? Is this a short-term thing, or, exactly how long can you do this?
Well, that's a good question. And I would say that there's no perfect answer to this. But my guess would be, and typically which would make sense, is like 12 to 16 weeks. So 3 or 4 months, you'd be focusing on this. And then depending on how you're responding. Okay. So if you started to, flatline and not make as good of gains, then you want to probably consider changing things up and going to a different routine. But if it was still working, then you still want to keep going, especially if your strength continues to improve. So that's the other thing with training. You got to kind of read your body, read how you're adapting to things. And then once you start to level out a little bit, which does happen with a lot of routines, you move on to a different combination, and that does change it up. And that's what I do for myself as well. So,
well, it seems like with all the information that we have covered in the Master Series up to now and even today, he seems to have an answer for everything. I mean, Vince really knew what the heck was going on, didn't he?
Well, again, you're dealing with a guy that had to get Hollywood stars in shape really quickly. He worked with, Mr. Olympia competitors, and a lot of great athletes came out of his gym. So yeah, and he was always experimenting on himself, anyways, to make sure he's giving good value to his clients, because he's a really, he's a proud, smart man. So yeah, he was kind of like a mad scientist, so to speak, with coming up with strategies.
Well, as we wrap up in the segment here, any final thoughts, Armin?
So if you're going to do this, which, nothing wrong with that, I think it's a good change up. I would be sure to change up the exercises, though, over time, so that you're going to get a complete development. So in other words, like on chest, he does the barbell chest press to the neck, and then he does flat dumbbell flies. Well, then maybe, another time after you get good at that, maybe you substitute the dumbbell presses with incline flies. So you're working the upper chest and you're kind of switching things out, which will kind of keep it fresh. So that'd be one thing I would make a suggestion on. But other than that, as you're keeping it fresh and things are working, then you're making progress. But I just like putting other exercises in there because I can kind of challenge myself with how I'm doing. But again, if you're tracking everything and you want to measure in your progress, then you want to kind of stick with the same thing, but then switch it out at that point and then see how that works for you. So
gotcha.
Other than that, I would continue, again, focus on mastering these routines as best you can, because that's where you're going to learn a lot of stuff, just by mastering them, and you're going to know how things are responding.
So compounds and triple splits, a part of the Master Series by Vince Gironda. Now, is this information and this workout available on nspnutrition.com, Armin?
Yeah, well, you can get the Master Series from nspnutrition.com if you like to start digging into it.
Awesome.
Yeah, that'd be the best place to go. Yeah.
All right. Well, a lot of great information as usual. We appreciate it very much. We're going to head to our little commercial break. You'll be hearing a brief word from NSP Nutrition. And when we come back, we'll be talking about mixed nuts. So stand by, and Armin and I will be right back.
Hey, and welcome back to the NSP Nutrition Show. I'm Armin Eckelbarger.
And I'm Frank Mills, and thank you again for watching the show or listening to the show today. Armin and I, before we get into the benefits of mixed nuts, Armin, I was actually thinking the other day as I was taking my NSP multivitamin, how much of a difference I have felt since I started taking a multivitamin. I was a guy that worked around a lot of people at one time, used to get sick 5, 6, or 7 times a year. And when I got sick, I would go down for the count. I'd be sick for a week or 2 every single time, Since I started taking my supplements and this NSP Nutrition multivitamin, I have not been sick now for 3 years. No cold, no COVID, no flu, no nothing. It's probably the best multivitamin I've ever taken. What do you think about it?
Well, I got to tell you, I've tried a lot of multivitamins. I've tried the $100 multivitamins, all over the place. And for the money, these are just as good. I felt the same taking this versus the $100 multivitamins. So to me, the best thing to do is, read your body, but you don't need to spend that amount of money on vitamins if you want to get this benefit. So I think it's really a good value for the dollar. I mean, they last, they get the job done, you notice it, and they work. So that's just my take.
Well, I've heard a lot of people say, well, boy, they're really big. Well, they are a larger type of a supplement, but the thing that I found is when I'm eating breakfast, I pop one in, and as I'm eating, take them. And I don't have half the problem as if I was just going to take them, after I ate or something like that. It's a little easier that way, and it probably won't be that big of a deal. I think a lot of the issues of taking a large supplement is more mental than physical, because a lot of times when you're eating, your bites and amounts are larger than any kind of actual
No, that's
supplement
true.
that you would take, right?
Oh, that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, I encourage you guys to get on to nspnutrition.com. If you're looking for a good multivitamin, get the Mega One, give it a shot. It
Hmm.
absolutely is fantastic. So,
Yep. I agree.
all right. So let's get into the benefits of eating mixed nuts. You know, there's a lot of individuals thinking that eating nuts, whatever kind of nut it is, oh, they're fattening. Oh, you can't eat too much. Oh, you've got to be really careful, right? It's got that information out there. So I was kind of curious, Armin, is this where you got this topic from on the benefits of it?
Well, for me, I eat them all the time, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it'd be a good idea to go over, what people don't realize about eating mixed nuts. But yeah, there's a lot of overstatement now. If you eat a lot of carbs and you eat mixed nuts, well, that's carbs and fats being combined. I don't recommend that. So, but
Right, right.
I carb cycle, so I'm having protein and fat. So mixed nuts are a good additive to that based on
Mm-hmm.
my own personal experience. So that's kind of what I thought. Well, let's just talk a little bit about it.
Right, right. Okay. So why don't you define to everybody what mixed nuts mean? Because, there's a lot of different mixed nuts and people could think it's just anything thrown in there. So why don't you define that for us?
Yeah, good point. So like in my definition would be, it's going to be different than what the people think. Okay,
Okay.
so I'm talking about a combination of all the different nuts except for peanuts. Okay, and
There you
peanuts
go.
are not really a nut; they're a root. So that's the thing here. So when I'm saying mixed nuts, it's a totally different story. So another way to say it would be deluxe mixed nuts, which basically means there are no peanuts in that combination. So
Okay. So a lot of people are going to hear this and go, okay, Armin's anti peanut. But why don't you explain a little bit more about your thoughts on the peanut itself?
all right, good point. And I'm kind of anti-peanut after reading a lot of stuff and using. I like peanuts. I mean, I like peanut butter too. I mean, I'm no different from
Yeah.
anybody else. But at the same time, what people don't realize is peanuts are high in omega 6 and omega 9 oils, and these tend to cause inflammation over time. And so,
Hmm.
if you're somebody that's struggling with joint issues and you're eating a lot of peanut butter or peanuts, uh, you need to I would recommend you take that out of your menu because it's not
Gotcha.
helping. Okay. The other thing is everybody talks about the source of protein that you get from mixed nuts and also
Mm-hmm.
peanuts. They act like it's a excellent protein source, and it's not. Peanuts are like 1.8 on the protein efficiency ratio scale, and that's worse than soybeans. So don't be falling for this trap about, oh yeah, it's high in protein. That's what you see on
Mm-hmm.
the media. Oh, it's high in protein. Everything they talk about is high in protein, but it's shitty protein. Probably get shot for saying that, but that's just being point blank. It's not it's not good protein. Okay. So
Right.
don't kid yourself. Oh, I'm getting all these grams of protein. And the other thing is peanuts tend to be a heavily polluted food source because of how they process them and handle them. So that's why
Right.
you had different issues a few years back where people were getting really sick because of, you know, all the things that were happening with how they were
Mm-hmm.
handling the peanuts. So just another thing to keep in mind. But I like peanuts, like peanut butter. You're going to have to do it pretty sparingly, in my opinion. As a
Mm-hmm.
treat would be how I approach it.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, that's why there's a lot of options out there for peanut butter. You've got almond butter, right? So
Yeah.
there there are options out there. I am kind of curious on the mixed nuts that you prefer that you think are, I don't know, maybe the better ones to eat.
Well, good question. Like I like Brazil nuts; they're high in selenium, so that helps with testosterone production. You got
Mm-hmm.
almonds, which have good omega 3 in them. Walnuts are really good vitamins in walnuts. You got macadamia nuts, a lot of good features to those. Cashews, who doesn't like cashews? Hazelnuts, pecans, etc. So, those are the kind that I like to see, you know, in a container to work off of because they tend to, when you eat them, they mix well Taste
Hmm.
good. I have very little digestive problem with them.
You know, I have to bring this up because a lot of people believe that macadamia nuts are like the worst of the group, right? I mean, we hear a lot of bad stuff about how fattening they are and how you can't eat a lot of those, right? I mean, I've heard that all over the place.
Well, this is the saturated fat people that, that's all bad for you. But, at the end of the day, you got a lot of fiber in these nuts. Okay.
Hmm.
So, if you mix some macadamia nuts in it with the other, you how big of a spread is it on saturated fat that you're getting? And I've got a
Hmm.
couple stats we'll touch on regarding that. But yeah, I mean, it's like everything else. You got to keep everything in moderation. And if you're eating all, half a can of macadamia nuts or a can of macadamia nuts, well, that's not mixed nuts to begin with. Okay. So,
Right, right.
but at the same time, a lot of this stuff's overstated. It just depends on how your nutrition is. Now, if your nutrition's horrible and you're eating everything that's around and you're throwing that in there, well, maybe it is a problem,
Right.
for the people, the experts who want to, throw it under the bus, but they're good for you whether you like it or
Absolutely.
not. They are good for you. We need some saturated fat. So,
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you clarified that. How often do you eat mixed nuts, Armin?
well, for me, I have them typically 4 to 5 days a week,
Wow. Okay.
which I'm sure some people are like going, oh my god.
Yeah, yeah, that
But
was surprising. Okay.
what the way I have them is I have them after I have lunch because like to have them earlier in the day because they do have fat in them, but I use it for an energy source. And again, you have a lot of fiber. So you stay full, you stay satiated for quite some
Hmm.
time after having, after having eating some nuts. And it doesn't have to be a lot, but I find it really works well. And that fiber is good for you. So at the end of the meal, you got the benefits of it, and I'm full. So that's how I like to use them. Now I'll throw a little trick in there. If you want, throw some dark chocolate in there, and it tastes even better.
Oh.
And again, it's low carb, so you get some antioxidants from the dark chocolate. Again, to make sure it's quality dark chocolate, and they even make some different products that have mixed nuts in them with dark chocolate. Tastes great. So that's another thing you can do. Again, just to kind of change it up, give you a little bit of a treat, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
after you having your lunch. So that's why I do it 4 or 5 days a week. So,
All right. So what about the folks that are the calorie counters? They're worried about the high calorie content. Do you have some answers for them?
okay, so yeah, they're higher calorie because they have more fat. Okay, but when you're eating a low carb diet, if you start doing the math on that, you're not getting as many calories anyways. Okay. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of fiber to help offset what gets absorbed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what fiber is supposed to do. So it's kind of overstated. So if you're tracking calories, you're going to find that if you're just having some protein, some fat, and some nuts, that calorie content is only going to be so high. And they fill you up pretty quickly. I mean, once you start having a few nuts, you get filled up pretty quick, especially if you've already ate some food. So I think
Mm-hmm.
I think it's being overstated. But just kind of give you an idea, one serving of mixed nuts is typically 11 grams of total carbohydrates. So that's 11 net carbs overall. So again, not a
Mm-hmm.
lot. You get 59 grams of fat. Oh my God, fat. And then 17 grams of different types of protein. Nuts are going to
Mm-hmm.
vary on the protein efficiency ratio, which equates to 628 calories. So, oh my God, 628 calories. So, but if you're training, you're working out hard, you're going to need the energy anyways. But you can always cut it back half a serving, whatever, if
Mm-hmm.
you're concerned about the calorie content. So, I just I don't get too caught up in that.
Okay. Well, you just mentioned protein efficiency. What about
Yeah.
protein efficiency?
All right, that's a good question. The pistachios are really the complete protein that you can get from a nut versus other nuts. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's good to combine them with other nuts because the other nuts aren't complete proteins. But so like when you mix, other proteins with other proteins, you're going to get a complete amino acid profile in most cases. It's the same like with vegan. If you have rice and beans, you're getting the amino. They're not complete proteins, but if they're ate together, they'll create a complete protein. And that's the benefits of having mixed nuts as well, is you're going to get a good complete protein profile. And it's not going to be a lot, but it's going to be more quality. So I think that's what people need to understand.
Well, I guess another question I had is about the ratio of the mixed nuts. Is there a select amount that you put, like, okay, 2 Brazil nuts, 8 macadamia nuts, 4 almonds? I mean, is there any, or do you just kind of mix them up and you get what you get?
Well, I buy them already pre-mixed. And so, you're going to get it based on money. Okay. So they're going to
Gotcha.
they're going to have, always going to have more almonds in there. Always going to have a few more cashews in there because those are easier, less expensive.
Right,
Then
right.
they'll sprinkle in the higher end nuts, like some Brazil nuts. They won't put a lot in there, but they'll put some. And then pistachios, I'll put some of those in there. So it's kind of a mix of what brand you're buying and then your budget.
Gotcha.
And then
Gotcha.
Now, one other thing I do want to say is when you buy mixed nuts, though, avoid the cheaper ones because they have soy or vegetable oil added to them. That's not helping you. You want all pure nuts. Okay, you don't want a bunch of oils added in.
Right.
That brings up the price, but that's better for you. So don't be buying the cheaper brands that provide the mixed nuts, but then they got this soybean oil and different vegetable oils and stuff added into it, because that's not really helping. So just quick tip on that too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So we've talked a lot about mixed nuts here. Let's talk about the benefits of eating them. You've talked about a lot of different things, but there's a lot of quality reasons why you should eat mixed nuts, right?
Absolutely. I mean, here's the thing. It's a very nutritiously rich, dense food. And that's always good when you're training. You need the energy. You need to have that source of energy to get things done. Okay. And so nuts contain a lot of the minerals and vitamins that your body needs. So that's really important. They're also a main source of omega-3 fatty acids, which is always a good thing. And the health benefits are, if you can look them up, there's all kinds. I mean, it helps reduce arthritis. It helps through rheumatoid arthritis, especially, and it helps protect against Alzheimer's and dementia. So it's good for brain circulation. One study found that eating nuts on a regular basis helps to strengthen the brainwave frequencies associated with cognition, healing, learning, which that's good, and then memory and other different key brain functions. So it does help the brain function well. And that's why I also like to have them for lunch, because as you get later in the day, things aren't always functioning as well as you were hoping for. So I feel like it helps up a little bit more. So that's another reason. And then almonds, I mean, they help improve memory. Pistachio, they're help preserve fatty acids. So this helps, and this whole combination helps to reduce inflammation. Inflammation is not a good thing. You want to keep that to bare minimum. And then macadamia nuts also contribute to good normal brain function, even though they get kind of thrown under the bus.
Well, that's a lot of good information. And I guess that when I started thinking about this, a lot of people talk about the fats, and I was kind of curious, what about the fats, since they're high in calories?
Well, if you do a little research, most of the nuts are monosaturated fats, so they can break down pretty easily. Macadamia nuts are the ones that have the saturated fat, and then pecans have some saturated fat, and then hazelnuts have a little bit of saturated fat. Again, I think we're splitting hairs here on how much saturated fat you're really taking in. And again, it's a nut source. Coconut has some saturated fat. Okay. But at the end of the day, how much of that are you really eating every single day? I mean, I just don't get it, but they think it's a bad thing. So, and the bottom line is, even though it's high in calorie and high in saturated, you're going to get filled up pretty quickly. That helps to minimize. I mean, if your leptin and ghrelin hormones are working right, especially your leptin, it's going to say you're full. You're not going to want any more. And I can tell you personally, you're going to be satiated for quite a number of hours, not even have to worry about eating anything. So if you got a kind of a job where you can't eat for 4 or 5 hours, that's a great way to help buffer that, in my opinion.
Mixed nuts. Okay. Well, as we are wrapping up here, you've offered a lot of great information, and educated everybody on why it's okay to eat them, why you should eat them. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, again, when you're eating the mixed nuts, I mean, you got fat, which is quality fats. Okay, you got fiber, and that's always a good thing. And then don't use them so much for protein. You're not going to get a ton of quality protein here. You're going to get some, that's fine. That's why I have them for lunch. I have a protein meal and then follow up with that. So it kind of gives me a little bit more fat in the meal, again, to keep my energy up. So you'll stay more satiated, like I talked about before. And that's a good thing. And then you'll have good, sustainable energy levels. And I found this to be why I like to do it, along with being more alert, brain function wise. I just think it's a great win-win. And again, maybe just do it 2 or 3 times a week or whatever suits you. But and they aren't cheap, so you got to work on your budget depending on how you're buying them. But I like them because it really rounds out my nutrition, in my opinion. And then the clients I work with, I would suggest it for them.
Well, the way I like to eat them is I like to crack them myself and do the work. I think you'll find you won't eat as many and you'll enjoy them more if you have to do the work to get to them. I don't know. That's the way I feel about it. But, so I'm glad to hear that there's a lot of good benefits of it. And, Armin, you always come up with great content for these shows. Very informative, very thorough. But we also have to lean on our audience a little bit sometimes for, some topics or things like that. We appreciate when we get that, don't we?
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, if you guys got some other different ideas or things you're concerned about, post it down there and I'll get on as quickly as I can and see if we can help educate more people that are thinking maybe the same thing. Hey.
Absolutely. And we do appreciate very much, as does NSP Nutrition, you watching the show or following the show on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. We really appreciate it. Armin and I enjoy doing this. We've been doing it for a couple of years now, not just for NSP, but for our other podcasts that we were doing for quite a while. Frank Mills Reality Fitness. Hey, I throw that in there if you want to check that out. But, we enjoy doing this. We like bringing the information to you. If we can impact one person so you can be healthier, happier, increase your workout, whatever we can do, that's what we like to do. That's why we do this, right, Armin?
Yes, sir. I mean, it's again, to add value, to help people, and then you get more out of life that way too. So, and we're doing things we feel are in your best interest that'll help you get more out of what you're doing. Yep.
Absolutely. So if you do have a topic you'd like us to cover, if you have a comment, a suggestion, just overall feedback, you can do that on YouTube in the comment section. Armin, like he just said, takes a look at that. Or you can email NSP Nutrition and we'll get that. The email is support@nspnutrition.com. We'll get that information, and who knows, maybe your topic or suggestion could be in our next show. You never know, right, Armin?
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Well, listen, thanks everybody for joining us today. We definitely appreciate it. And check back next week for a brand new episode of the NSP Nutrition Show.
Hey, thanks for checking out the NSP Show. Go to nspnutrition.com where you can find a whole heap of resources to help you achieve stunning definition and eye-popping levels of muscularity. Don't forget, you can save 10% on your first order by using the code NSP Show at the checkout. Catch you next time.